Good afternoon, good evening, members of the Society and visitors. You are most welcome to our meeting, second meeting of this session after the anniversary meeting that we had not two weeks ago. I don't need to introduce myself to members because you know who I am. Of course you know who I am. But it would be discourteous, for I know there are some visitors amongst you who I don't have the acquaintance, and it would be discourteous of me if they were not to be introduced. So I will introduce myself, and my name is, of course members know, I am the Vice President of the Society, and my name is Henry Walbert. So welcome all, and it's my pleasure to do the introductions before I hand over to our esteemed chair, elected only 2 weeks ago, and I will put it to him shortly. Before that, I will need to get these newfangled spectacles out, I'm afraid, but I am pleased to say that these are courtesy of the member who is amongst us, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Henry Lawson, who is here, and these are actually from his establishment. The spectacular Mr. Lawson produced these spectacles, and I must say, so they're very fine too. So I shall wear those. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Okay, let me just give my few little intro, and then we shall be okay. To start, welcome members, invited visitors. We seem to have as many, actually, we have as many visitors amongst us and introductions as there are members this evening. We're a packed meeting. I see, in fact, I'm just looking round and I am shocked, but secretly delighted to find that we have a good number of the fairer and pretty half of humanity amongst us. I trust you of that kind will not find the revelations of our philosophers too shocking or assaulting on the senses. I am assured by my very intelligent friend and protege, Miss Mary Somerville, that if you are attending here today, you will be of a sufficient robust mental constitution to withstand any brutality exposed in this evening's proceedings. Indeed, if you are as intelligent and familiar with the subject matter as she is, then I fully expect you will benefit and more. In the fullness of time, you will no doubt add significantly to our paleontological and geological knowledge. There are others, of course, who are amongst us. I see we have amongst our midst Mr. Babbage, being introduced, of course, by Reverend Bransby. May I say that we are, sir, we are looking forward to a demonstration of your innovations, which I believe you have called a calculating engine. It is this most intriguing to see where your invention will lead. Welcome also to Captain Franklin, introduced by Dr. Fitton. Welcome, Captain. We understand that you are in the midst of organising, planning another expedition to the Arctic waters to chart the Northwest Passage, and we wish you very well in your endeavours and for a safe and successful return. And I would also ask, oh, by the way, yes, Captain Franklin, yes, I think your wife is actually the daughter of another esteemed visitor who is here, Mr. William Griffin, introduced by Mr. Mayende, Member Mayende. I wonder if he has brought us one of his pineapple fruits. I have indulged in this delicacy, and it is delicious. And I am given to understand that Mr. Griffin's protege, Mr. Joseph Paxton, is doing wonders by his innovations of glass houses up in Derbyshire for the Duke of Devonshire. I trust his innovations will bear fruit. If you pardon my pun, and bring forth some splendid Crystal Palace. Members, gentlemen, and ladies, I look forward to this full house and the proceedings, and a few rules before we commence. Should there be a fire in the house, God forbid, gentlemen, should there be, the fire exit is exactly at the rear of the room. We must remove the table and exit out, and out there straight into the corridor or the passageway which leads out into the street to the rear. The second announcement that I have, which is something rather trivial, but it doesn't surprise me with some of our members who are clearly slightly absent-minded, and there is somebody who has left an object which I am told is a lens cap. Personally, I have not come across this particular sort of object. I do believe it's something to do with, there is it Fox Talbot or something, Connie Butler, and you know these people from South Wales, or Wiltshire, South Wales, and I think it's somebody called Fox Talbot who's dealing with dabbling around with something which is called photography, for goodness sake. Anyway, it seems that there's one of these newfangled caps for something or other that is being left upstairs. So do make sure that you go and collect it or whatever you do. Okay, and with that, my dear people, I would like to now hand over to the newly elected president, the Reverend William Butler. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warburton, for that fulsome introduction. And as you will see this afternoon and this evening, ladies and gentlemen, some of us inhabit the days of 1824 rather more fulsomely than others. Well, I should like to add my welcome to that of our esteemed friend and Vice President. I come before you as a slightly modified version of myself, I'm afraid. My new friend, Miss Mary Morland of Abingdon, wondered what I would look like with a full beard, and hence my hirsute appearance. Well, having been elected president of this august body only a matter of 2 weeks ago, I'm gratified to see such a large and diverse body of people before me in this, my first meeting as president. Not, I'm sure, that you've come to appreciate me. No, indeed, you must be looking forward to meeting monsters of the most monstrous kind. And I'm referring there neither to Mr. Warburton nor to the Reverend Conybeare. The rumours cannot have escaped you, though. The everlasting hills of Dorsetshire and Oxfordshire have been yielding antediluvian reptilian treasures entombed in shale and slate for millennia. Indeed, this meeting shall, I'm certain, prove propitious for its content, the significance of which is likely to ring down the centuries to come. My very good friend, Mr. Conybeare, is here to present yet another of the wonders supplied to the geological community by that indefatigable toiler, that most industrious and perspicacious fossilist, Mary Anning of Lyme. A woman of unparalleled talent when it comes to unearthing the remains of once living giants. She ploughs the lias with remarkable efficiency. It's as if she has the talents of the sharp-eyed lynx, which, according to Pliny, was able to see through solid rock. Under her gimlet gaze, the secondary rocks of cliff and foreshore willingly yield their treasures of vertebrates, as the locals call them, and with barely a whimper, these denizens of the past of the lias and her familiar, I refer of course to Trey, her trusted four-legged companion who guards her discoveries as Cerberus did the gates of Hades. I understand from Mr. Conybeare that things were not so straightforward when it came to delivering the fruits of Miss Hanning's labours to our building here in Bedford Street. The journey by boat to London passed without mishap, but the stairs to the meeting room proved to be more challenging than the cliffs of Black Ven when it came to transporting the carcass of this marine giant in its silent repose, boxed in its bed of matrix and protective plaster from the ground floor. When Jacob wrestled with the Lord, he received an injurious touch on his thigh, which carried him with him throughout his life thereon. While when the Reverend Conybeare, together with his assistants, wrestled with Gog or Magog on the Geological Society stairs, the touch he received was equally painful. Indeed, he might have added a few words of Anglo-Saxon to the classical languages in which he is so proficient. You might remember that in 1821, the transactions of this society, together with his colleague, Mr. Henry de la Beach, Mr. Conybeare described the headless remains of a saurian in Colonel Birch's collection from Lyme, which differed from the better-known monster of the deep known as Ichthyosaurus. He gave it the name Plesiosaurus and placed it intermediate between ichthyosaurs and crocodiles. With some trepidation, he later ascribed an isolated skull from Somerset to the same beast. Miss Anning's discovery of a large skeleton on the 10th of December last year, 1823, threw the good Reverend into something of a spin. The ensuing excitement and visions of resurrected sea monsters impinged on his concentration and interfered with the normal process of sermon writing. As a consequence, he has made time to examine both Miss Anning's drawings and the prepared bones of the animal itself through the kindness of the owner, the Duke of Buckingham. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce the Reverend William D. Conybeare, Fellow of the Royal Society, recent founding member of the Bristol Philosophical Institution, and currently Rector of Sully in Glamorganshire, whose parishioners are eagerly waiting for their neglected sermon. An esteemed member of this society, to read his paper on the discovery of an almost perfect skeleton of the Plesiosaurus. And with that, Mr. Warburton, I vote that we should move to the side and give Mr. Conybeare the floor.
Indeed, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. Yes, I have to echo what our Vice President said. You do bring a certain, shall we say, radiance and possibly fragrance to our proceedings this afternoon. In fact, I think I might even say that great old gentleman of the theatre, Meandros, was absolutely right, you know, and you prove it by being here today when he said that even women can behave reasonably sometimes. Anyway, this afternoon, I am highly gratified at being able to lay before you this most perfect specimen of Plesiosaurus. Until yesterday, thank you so much. Until yesterday, my knowledge of this beautiful specimen was, I'm afraid, limited to this fine drawing sent to me directly from Lyme by that wonderful discoverer, Miss Anning. But now, by the kind liberality of the Duke of Buckingham, who has, for the purposes of scientific investigation, placed it for a time at the disposal of my friend, Mr. Buckland, we have before us the very beast itself. This, gentlemen, ladies, this is a new fossil genus. It is one that I felt myself authorized to propound almost 3 years ago after examining several fragments found then only in a very disjointed state. It was at that time
natural, nay, maybe even just, that many persons interested in these researches should hesitate to admit the conclusions of an observer who was avowedly inexperienced in comparative anatomy. Suspicious, perhaps, that like the painter in Horace, who, you remember, combined the upper parts of a beautiful woman with the ugly tail of a fish, that I too should have been led to constitute a fictitious animal from the juxtaposition of incongruous members, referable in truth to different species. But this magnificent specimen so recently discovered has, I am delighted to say, confirmed the justice of my former conclusions in every essential point. The only material error that I have to correct relates to the bones which I supposed to be the radius and ulna, with regard to all the other parts of the skeleton, where I assigned to the same animal heads and vertebrae which had at that time never been found in connection. My opinions have received full confirmation. Indeed, my conjectured restoration of the paddle may now be seen to give a very considerable approximation to the true structure, considering the very imperfect materials afforded to me at that time. But in addition to these particulars, which in all material features were correctly stated, the specimen now exhibited does also present others of a most novel and interesting character. I allude particularly to the neck, which is fully equal in length to both the body and the tail united, and which, surpassing in the number of its vertebrae that of the longish neck birds, even the swan, deviates from the laws which were heretofore regarded as universal in quadrupedal animals. I mentioned this as the most prominent and interesting feature of the recent discovery, and that which in effect renders this animal one of the most curious and important additions which geology has yet made to comparative anatomy. Now, with reference to these few notes I have here that I have been able to make so far, I shall proceed to the details in the usual order. So first, the head. The present specimen and another of this part only in possession of Miss Philpott have confirmed the restoration attempted from the distorted head figured in my earlier paper. But now we also learn for the first time that the head of this animal was remarkably small, forming less than the 13th part of the total length of the skeleton. In the Ichthyosaurus, this proportion is 1/4. And this proportional smallness of the head, and therefore of the teeth, must have rendered the Plesiosaurus a very, very unequal combatant against the latter animal. However, the structure of the neck may perhaps be considered a compensating provision, supplying the beast with a means of security and of catching its prey. I pass on now to the vertebrae, of which distinctions between the cervical and the caudal were indeed fully and correctly stated in my former communications. I had not then, however, observed more than 12 of the cervical, whereas the present specimen exhibits about 35, or if we include the anterior dorsal, 41. This great increase in the number of joints in the neck is the more remarkable from the rigour with which nature usually enforces the law of a very limited number. In all quadrupedal animals, in all the mammalia, the series is exactly 7. And so strict is the adherence to this rule that even the short and stiff neck of the whale and the long and flexible neck of the camelopard are formed out of the same elementary number. In the former, the vertebrae are extremely thin and ankylosed together. In the latter, they are greatly elongated. Reptiles possess only from 3 to 8 cervical vertebrae. Birds approach more nearly to the present species, but still fall greatly short, having from 9 to 23, the number being greatest in the swan. The ichthyosaurus appears to have possessed about 18 cervical vertebrae, whereas in fishes, the ribs commence almost immediately behind the head. The views of Geoffroy de Saint-Hilaire that nature, in the organisation of the animal frame, has caused the sternal portion to shift along the vertebral column seem to derive an important corroboration from the structure of this animal. But it is remarkable that whereas the sternum holds a mean position in the quadrupeds, and is thrown forward in the fishes and backwards in birds, yet its position in this instance assimilates the plesiosaurus less to fishes, though destined to move in the same element, than to birds, and it exhibits at the same time a very wide departure from the type of the saurian tribe. Although the number of cervical vertebrae is thus unexampled, yet the length of the neck is nearly rivaled by another of the reptile class, namely the land tortoise. The length in this case concealed by the anterior extension of the shell. However, notwithstanding its elongation, the tortoise has only 8 cervical vertebrae. The general proportions of the tortoise, its length of neck, shortness of tail, and smallness of its head are in some degree analogous to what we observe in the plesiosaurus, but the structure of the head and teeth of the latter and its want of shell entirely negative the idea of the plesiosaurus being intimately allied to the tortoise. It is decidedly connected with the saurian order. Of the dorsal vertebrae, I have nothing to add to my former remarks. The greater part of these in this splendid specimen are, as we can see, removed from their place and scattered over the mass of shale in which they are embedded. This allows us a full view of the ribs and pelvis, and 21 dorsal or lumbar vertebrae appear dispersed, though their exact number cannot be ascertained. 23 caudal vertebrae are remaining, and as about 3 of the extreme ones appear to be wanting, we may probably assume this part at 26 joints. The whole vertebral column then will number about 90. And the proportions of the whole of these parts will stand then nearly thus. Taking the head as 1, the neck will be as 3, the body as 4, and the tail as 3. The total length being, did I say the neck was 3? Should have been 5, and the body's 4, and that's 3. The total length being, as I have remarked, 13 times that of the head. The tail, having been fully described in my former papers, suggests no new remarks, excepting that its shortness must have prevented it from being used, as in fishes, as an instrument of propulsion in a forward direction. It was probably employed only as a rudder to steer the animal by horizontal flexion or by sudden vertical stroke to elevate or depress it while swimming through the water. Passing on now to the humerosternal parts, to wit the coracoid bones and the scapula. The coracoids of this specimen are longer than those represented in my first memoir, but since those evidently belong to a much younger individual, I hesitate to consider this difference as specific. The scapula has been correctly represented in my first memoir, but the humerus, which I had figured from a specimen belonging to the late Mr. Cathcart, now preserved in the public library at Bristol, the humerus that is, not Mr. Cathcart, is in consequence of an accidental dislocation exhibited in an inverted position. Now to the extremities. The humerus articulates immediately with the bones which in my preceding description I had considered as the first row of the carpus. I have again to acknowledge the error into which I have been led in the insertion of a supposed radius and ulna between these two parts. I was led to introduce these bones to an earlier specimen in which they are so placed, but I have subsequently retracted this view, having learnt that when that specimen was found, the bones in question were loose and had subsequently been glued into their position in consequence of a conjecture of the proprietor. The great multiplication of joints in the phalangic series of this animal, being up to 9 or possibly even 10, strongly distinguishes it from all known quadrupeds. In most mammalia, the number of phalanges is restricted to 3. A majority of the cetacea also appear to possess only 3 phalanges, but the Delphinus delphis present as many as 7, the nearest approximation to the number in the Plesiosaurus. It is also interesting to observe that the use for which nature intended this part, namely natation, being the same in the cetacea, a similar modification has been superinduced, presenting a link between the usual structure of quadrupedal extremities and the still more complicated organization of the paddle in the Ichthyosaurus. The phalanges are flattened, as in the turtle and other animals destined for natation, and were doubtless in like manner covered by a common integument and thus converted into a species of fins. I shall conclude with some more general remarks. Having not my friend Professor Buckland's familiarity with the fair Terpsichore, I shall remain sine motu. Nevertheless, I hope I shall make my beast roar just as loudly as any of the professor's celebrated hyenas. In its motion, this animal must have resembled the turtle more than any other. And the turtle also, could we divest it of its shelly case, would present some slight approach in its general proportions to the Plesiosaurus. I shall leave it to others more conversant than myself with the analogies of comparative anatomy, the inference to which these particulars may lead concerning the habits of this singular animal, and finding myself to the following general observations: that the beast was aquatic is evident from the form of its paddles. That it was marine is almost equally so from the remains with which it is universally associated. that it may have occasionally visited the shore, the resemblance of its extremities to those of the turtle may lead us to conjecture. Its motion, however, must have been very awkward on land. Its long neck must have impeded its progress through the water, presenting a striking contrast to the organization which so admirably fits the ichthyosaurus to cut through the waves. May it not, therefore, be concluded, since in addition to these circumstances, its respiration must have required frequent access of air, that it swam upon or near the surface, arching back its long neck like a swan, and occasionally darting down at the fish which happened to float within its reach. It may perhaps have lurked in shoal water along the coast, concealed amongst the seaweed, and raising its nostrils to a level with the surface from a considerable depth, it may have found a secure retreat from the assaults of dangerous enemies. Meanwhile, the length and flexibility of its neck may have compensated for the want of strength in its jaws and its incapacity for swift motion through the water. By the suddenness and agility of the attack which they enabled it to make on every animal fitted for its prey, which came within its extensive sweep. Now, there have been some philological objections to the composition of the name that I originally gave to this animal, Plesiosaurus, proximate to the saurians. I beg to state now that it is formed on the very same principle as words such as exagelos, like an angel, or isodendros, like a tree. All, I assure you, gentlemen, ladies, of approved classical usage. This name may, however, appear rather vague at this stage of our knowledge, and an appellation derived from its peculiar length of neck may be more preferred. But for the present, I shall retain the old generic name, adding for specific distinction that well-known Homeric epithet, Dolichoderus, as characterizing the most striking peculiarity of its osteology. I am the rather induced to follow this course because I think it very probable, from specimens which I have examined, that species of Plesiosaurus with shorter necks exist in other strata. I have already figured a column belonging to an animal of this genus in which the proportions of the Plesiosaurus dolichoderus are inverted. Professor Buckland has since obtained from Market Raisin large fragments of the skeleton of the species of which that vertical column must have belonged. And from its enormous size, I shall provisionally indicate this species as Plesiosaurus giganteus. And I hope hereafter, in union with my friend, to submit drawings and a description of those remains to the Society. With reference to the elucidation of all these questions, I cannot but congratulate the scientific public that the discovery of this animal has been made at the very moment when the illustrious Cuvier is engaged in and on the eve of publishing his researches on the fossil of Ibera. From him, the subject will derive all that lucid order which he never has yet failed to introduce into the most obscure and intricate departments of comparative anatomy.
Well, I'm sure you would wish to join me in tendering our thanks to Mr. Conybeare for bringing to life such a remarkable representative of the saurian race which inhabited the seas of old. and for elucidating yet further the structure and relationships of this extinct Eneleosaurian. I'm sure you must be bursting with questions, but please hold on to them until all the papers for this evening's meetings have been read. Well, the secondary rocks of lime are not the only ones to have been yielding their previously entombed giant reptiles. As I hope to show you, the rocks in the environs of Oxford possess a similar bounty, which is beginning to come to light. I refer, of course, to the Stonesfield slate, a valuable local building stone exploited in underground galleries since Roman times. I'm very pleased to see Dr. Gideon Mantell in the audience. You might well have noticed in the recent issue of the Gentleman's Magazine that he discovered in Sussex some enormous bones belonging to a carnivorous beast belonging to the lizard tribe. This news has stimulated me to communicate notice of some enormous bones which I've been in possession of for several years now. So let me read you the text of my paper entitled Notice on the Megalosaurus, or Great Fossil Lizard of Stonesfield. Excuse me. Now you say, what rules the world? No idea? The stomach, sir. The stomach rules the world. The great eat the less eat the lesser still. And as you can see from this marvelous specimen here, let me come round so that you can see it. This is surely an enormous example of the consumer rather than the consumed. So that is the specimen, mainly, which I shall be talking about today, but also arranged on the table in front of us, you can see some further bones of this great beast. So I'm induced to lay before the Society representations of parts of the skeleton of an enormous fossil animal found at Stonesfield near Woodstock, about 12 miles to the northwest of Oxford, in the hope that, imperfect as are the present materials, their communication to the public may induce those who possess other parts of the same reptile, Dr. Mantell, to transmit to the Society such further information as may lead to a more complete elucidation of its osteology. The specimens here engraved, down on the benches there, are all preserved in the Oxford Museum. Nothing approaching an entire skeleton has yet been found, and nor have any bones been discovered in actual apposition, excepting the vertebrae and a similar series of equal magnitude presented to the Geological Society by Henry Warburton, Esquire. The detached bones here represented must have belonged to several individuals of various ages and sizes. There are others in the Oxford Museum which are derived from a very young animal. In the same stratum with them, there occur also fragments of large bones of similar structure which have been rolled to the state of pebbles. Although the known parts of the skeleton are at present very limited, they are yet sufficient to determine the place of the animal in the zoological system. Whilst the vertebral column, which you can see part of down at the end there, and the extremities much resemble those of quadrupeds, the teeth, here represented in the jaw, show the creature to have been oviparous and to have belonged to the order of saurians or lizards. The largest thigh bone of this animal in the museum at Oxford is 2 feet 9 inches long and nearly 10 inches in circumference at the central or smallest part. You can see it in the middle there. From these dimensions, as compared with the ordinary standard of the lizard family, a length of exceeding 40 feet and a bulk equivalent to that of an elephant 7 feet high have been assigned by Cuvier to the individual to which this bone belonged. And although we cannot safely attribute exactly the same proportions to recent and extinct species, yet we may with certainty ascribe to it a magnitude far exceeding that of any living lacerta or lizard. Large as are the proportions of this individual, they fall very short of those which we cannot but deduce from a thigh bone of another of the same species, which has been discovered in the ferruginous sandstone of Tilgate Forest near Cupfield. It's preserved in the valuable collection of Gideon Mantell Esquire of Lewis, together with many other bones belonging to the same species and are the same size with those from Stonesfield. Well, that femur, which has lost its head and lower extremity, measure in its smallest part, at the distance of 2 feet from the upper extremity, more than 20 inches in circumference, and therefore, when entire, must have equalled in magnitude the femur of the largest living elephant. To judge from the dimensions of this thigh bone, its former possessor must have been twice as great as that to which the similar bone in the Oxford Museum belonged. And if the total length and height of animals were in proportion to the linear dimensions of the extremities, the beast in question would have equalled in height our largest elephants, and in length fallen but little short of the largest whales. But as the longitudinal growth of animals is not in so high a ratio, after making some deduction, we may calculate the length of this reptile from Cupfield at around 60 to 70 feet. In consideration, therefore, of the enormous magnitude which this saurian attains, I have ventured, in concurrence with my friend and fellow labourer, the Reverend William Conybeare, to assign it the name Megalosaurus. The other animals that are found at Stonesfield are not less extraordinary than the Megalosaurus itself. Among the most remarkable are 2 portions of the jaw of the Didelphis or opossum, being of the size of a small kangaroo rat and belonging to a family which now exists chiefly in America, Southern Asia, and New Holland. I refer the fossil in question to this family on the authority of Monsieur Cuvier, who has examined it, and without the highest sanction I should have hesitated to announce such a fact, as it forms a case hitherto unique in the discoveries of geology, viz. That of the remains of a land quadruped being found in a formation subjacent to the chalk. The bones of long-legged birds, apparently allied to the order Grallae, which frequent the shores and shallow fords of seas or lakes, are found also embedded in the same stratum, and afford, I believe, the most ancient example yet discovered of the occurrence of fossil birds, which, like the terrestrial quadrupeds, have hitherto, with one exception, been noted only in strata above the chalk. The elytrons, or exterior sheaths of the wings, of more than one species of beetle occur in the same slate, and excepting in this instance and in the shale of the Danby coal pits of the Ulite Formation in Yorkshire, have not hitherto been discovered, I believe, in any stratum below the chalk. The Megalosaurus itself was probably an amphibious animal, and we might therefore expect, as is actually the case, to find it associated with the remains of other amphibia, such as the scales and teeth of crocodiles and the scales of tortoises. There are also teeth which appear to belong to the Plesiosaurus. The remains of land animals and amphibia are small in number, however, in comparison to the marine exuvii with which this stratum is crowded. Besides an immense number of species of shells, decidedly marine, such as nautili, ammonites, trigonia, and belemnites, there are abundantly the teeth of sharks and the teeth, pellets, scales, spines, and bones of many unknown species of fish, together with the remains of 2 or 3 species of small crustaceous animals of the crab and lobster kind. In the nearly adjacent quarries of Cornbrash limestone at a place called Gibraltar near Enslow Bridge on the east of Woodstock, the bones of large cetaceous animals are accompanied by the scales, teeth, and bones of a species of crocodile, nearly resembling the modern gavial or crocodile of the Ganges, and by numerous marine shells. This Cornbrash is the same with that which at Stonefield is immediately incumbent on the bed that is worked for slate. Of the vegetable kingdom also, the remains of which occur at Stonesfield are very numerous and present a no less curious assemblage of genera than the animals do. We find an abundance of plants, decidedly terrestrial, such as fragments of trees and ferns, several species of seeds and fruits, and branches of leaves, which nearly resemble the tuia and the ginger plant of modern botany. There are others, apparently lacustrine or fluviatile, such as gigantic reeds and grasses, and others again decidedly marine, such as algae, fuci, etc. All these vegetable fragments are dispersed in the same irregular manner and are mixed up with the wreck of the marine, amphibious, and terrestrial animals above enumerated. The whole of these remains are found in a bed of calcareous sandy slate, the greatest thickness of which does not exceed 6 feet, and which lies in the upper part of the third or lowest division of the Oolitic rocks, being nearly connected with the forest marble and interposed between the superstratum of the Cornbrash and the substratum of the Great Oolite of Bath. Its place amongst the continental equivalent formations is between the central and lowest strata of the Jura limestone. In working the quarries at Stonesfield, they descend by vertical shaft through a solid rock of Cornbrash and stratified clay more than 40 feet thick. There they get to a slaty stratum containing these remains. It's important to notice this circumstance because it's been supposed by many persons who have never visited the quarries that the remains are lodged either in fissures or cavities or in some superficial and merely local deposit. But this is decidedly not the case. They're absolutely embedded in a deeply situated regular stratum of the rock itself, which is known to extend across England from Collie Weston, near Stamford in Lincolnshire, to Hinton near Bath, and is in many places extensively quarried for coarse oolitic slate used for covering houses. Many of these quarries abound in marine and vegetable remains, but the Megalosaurus, opossum, birds, and Coleopterous insects have, I believe, as yet been observed in it only at Stonesfield. Mr. Mantell possesses in his rich and highly valuable collection at Lewes a small vertebra of Megalosaurus, which he purchased in London, having a label on it denoting that it came from Bath. Its matrix appears to be the Bath Oolite. In the Oxford Museum there's a rib of this animal, labelled Stonesfield, and embedded also in a mass of Bath Oolite or Cornbrash. The Cornbrash and Bath Oolite are the beds, the former immediately above, the latter immediately below the Stonesfield slate. As the Megalosaurus occurs also in the ferruginous sand of Tilgate Forest, it's clear that the range of this animal extends downwards from this formation to the Bath Oolite, and it's probable that its bones will hereafter be found in all the intermediate formations. It's never yet been noticed in the chalk. It's totally distinct from the gigantic monitor of Maastricht, of which Mr. Mantell also has discovered from some vertebrae in the chalk near Lewes and at Steyning, being, I believe, the only traces of this animal yet noticed in England. It appears from the collection of Mr. Mantell that the bones of Megalosaurus are not less abundant in the ferruginous sand near Cookfield in Sussex than they are in the Oolitic sand near Oxford. He's got numerous bones of many individuals of various ages and sizes, most of them broken, some rolled as at Stonefield to the state of pebbles. He also has many small teeth of this animal. In the same quarries at Cuckfield, he has discovered also the remains of birds, being, with the exception of Stonesfield, the only instance of the kind that I know of in the strata beneath the chalk. He has also established many other remarkable analogies between the animal remains of the Tilgate forest beds and those of Stonesfield. The above analogies are very striking, and although they show that the condition of the earth was nearly the same at the time when both these formations were deposited, yet the numerous and thick strata of oolite interposed between the two forbid us even for a moment to suspect their identity. The same conclusion also follows from a considerable variation between their fossil plants, and from an almost total discrepancy between their fossil shells. In a future communication, I propose to give a description with plates of the other most remarkable remains that occur at Stonesfield. My present object is to confine myself to the Megalosaurus, and as we are yet in possession of only dislocated fragments of this animal, the best method I can adopt is to subjoin the following description, imperfect as it is, of the plates next to this notice. While no part of the head of the Megalosaurus has yet been discovered, excepting many single teeth and a fragment of the lower jaw. The teeth are lodged in distinct alveoli, you can see the pits there, but do not adhere, as in monitors, by any incorporation of the root or sides with the substance of the jaw. They're loose. The young teeth are hollow at the base, and as usual, become filled as they grow older. The new teeth, here and here and in here, are formed in distinct cavities by the side of the old ones towards the interior surface of the jaw, and probably expel the old teeth by the usual process of pressure and absorption, and insinuate themselves in the cavity that is left vacant. The teeth are flattened laterally, as you can see, and recurved backwards, which is very obvious, being serrated on the posterior edge along the whole extent of their enamel. This edge is thicker and, like the back of a knife, is more solid than the posterior cutting edge. The outer rim of the jaw, here, rises almost an inch above the inner rim and forms a continuous lateral parapet supporting the teeth externally, whilst the inner rim throws up a series of triangular plates of bone, which you might just be able to see on the inner margin there, forming a zigzag buttress along the interior of the alveoli. From the centre of each triangular plate, a bony septum crosses the outer parapet. So we have a bony plate there and the septum going across the middle there, enclosing the tooth. Oops. The new teeth rise in the angle between the triangular plate and the external surface of the jaw. There are several distinct and rugose cavities for the presence of the inferior maxillary blood vessels and nerves. It's going to be very difficult to see from where you are, I think, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes there for the exit and entry of nerves and blood vessels. This character agrees not with the crocodiles, but with other members of the saurian family. From the absence of any curvature in this fragment of the anterior extremity, which is nearly a foot long after all, it's obvious that the lower jaw must have terminated in a flat, straight, and very narrow snout. The exuberant provision in this animal for rapid succession of young teeth to supply the place of those which might be shed or broken is very remarkable. It seems also that a small number of teeth only that were in use at the same time. Vertebrae, as you can see in the image furthest away from me. The bones that we have yet discovered of the vertebral column are confined to 5 ankylosed joints, including the 2 sacral and 2 others, which are probably referable to the lumbar and caudal vertebrae. They're all much contracted in the middle and have a deep fossa immediately beneath the annular part. Although we haven't got any dorsal vertebrae, we fortunately possess ribs, which you can see on the nearest image. They have a double articulation at the head, as in the crocodile, and the articulating faces of the body of the vertebrae are nearly flat surfaces, as in most fossil crocodiles and in the plesiosaurus. Their proportions will at once be seen by reference to that image. Both of the ribs have a double articulation in the representative vertebrae. The smaller one is apparently one of the anterior false ribs, and 2 transverse sections of the larger one show its proportions at the point of fracture. Again, close up here. There is also the outer view of the ilium, which is here, and apparently...
Do stand and see, for goodness sake! Why do you think we have benches? Stand and see! Sorry, sir.
No, that's frightened me to death, but
You should be in Parliament with me, sir.
I've lost my place now. I'm really discombobulated by this amount of interruption.
Men of sermons, rather than speeches.
So, that ilium, where Mr. Warburton has finished, is slightly concave, and the inner surface is slightly convex, and it shows marks of its articulation with the sacrum, which you can see down at the end. With regards to the os pubis, I'm inclined to consider the specimen forming this bone, but speak with hesitation because it might be the coracoid process of the scapula. It's difficult to see which one it is from here. I think it's the one top left corner of the first sheet. The extremities are best understood by reference to the one of these plates which form 2 views of the same bones, apparently a clavicle, and 2 opposite views of the same bone I got from Stonesfield. The medullary cavity of this bone is very large and is frequently filled with a mass of white calcareous spar. The substance of the bone is extremely compact and brittle. It's apparently a fibula, and a portion of a large bone of the metatarsus or metacarpus is also present there. And with that, I thank you very much, and hope that you will preserve a place in your heart for our megalosaurus. Thank you. Excuse me. This is one of those newfangled
Never say we are not advanced at the Geological Society. We not only deal in the past, but we deal in the future also. Well, Chair.
Yes. With that, I should like to hand over to Mr. Warburton, who has, I believe, some remarks to make.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Well, you will notice that I had to leave. I was induced to leave very shortly, just before Dr. Buckland's speech and his excellent exposition of this monster. And the reason is because it was that we should have our treasurer here, Mr. John Taylor, who was going to speak, but I had a note from him. So Mr. John Taylor, our esteemed treasurer, of course, and great mining man, has sent his deepest regret that he cannot attend this meeting this afternoon on account of him being engaged to finish the writing of the introductory notes for his book, Selections from the Works of the Baron de Humboldt relating to the climate, inhabitants, productions and mines of Mexico, which will, he tells me, be published next month by Longman, Rees, Ornbrown and Green. He has, however, sent a communication of a proposal to institute a regular school of mines, which I will read here. I am induced, says Mr. Taylor, to set before the Geological Society a proposal that is in full accord with its aims and objects. I aim to set out a prospectus for instituting a school of mines. Recent years have seen a great progress in a wide range of scientific and technological arts relating to mining. But I have noticed that all this has taken place in England with neither institutions of public instruction or books. In the course of translating selections from the works of our good friend the Baron von Humboldt, which relate to the mines of Mexico, Mr. Taylor read a letter to Humboldt which pays this country the compliment of saying that the mines can only be worked as they ought by the spirit and skill of Englishmen. Yeah. Yeah. Yet, although we have such praise, I contend that all mine captains should be informed about the latest theoretical and practical information in their field so that they might fulfill their office as efficiently as possible. Not 10 years ago, I observed in the mines of Cornwall that the miners were limited in scale and productiveness of their working, but now ingenuity and science have removed the barrier from those who are placed in the way of instruction and comparison, but to many who have not these advantages, the door of improvement yet remains in a manner closed. They hear indistinctly of the progress of others, but have not the means of judging rightly. They are too apt to fence themselves in with prejudice and conceit, and to remit what has not originated with themselves. I note that the education desirable for a miner is then a peculiar one, and must be adapted to go with the necessary labour and not to supersede it. It should explain and make clear the reasons for each proceeding, not to make the scholar and fit his proper duty. It should not tend to the paths of theory and dispute, but that show that good practices depend upon solid and intelligible principle. What is needed is a school of mining, where young men, while they could continue their practice underground, might hear those sciences explained which will be most useful to them, and might devote some of their spare hours, which are a miner's life affords, to seeing and comparing the practice of others in a place where their art has reached the greatest perfection. To conclude this brief communication, I observe that the demand for intelligent and well-instructed miners is now greater than any former period, and that a school of mines will not only be the means of instructing such agents, but it will be a place where character will be developed and, as it were, put upon record. As such, I appeal to the members of this society to support my proposal for instituting a school of mines. And when my book is completed, I shall write a full prospectus, complete with detailed financial and teaching arrangements, and look to your approval and backing in this aspiration to improve the application of our science and the prosperity that will ensue accordingly. Yours, etc., John Taylor, Esquire, Treasurer to the Geological Society. Communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warburton, for that written communication from our valuable Treasurer. And now I should like to throw the meeting open to a few questions. Dr. Nuts, I believe you might have a question concerning plesiosaurus. Please would you direct it directly to Mr. Koenig.
Mr. Koenig, are you confident that this fossil represents a single individual? With a prominent fracture in the rock and displaced vertebrae at the base of the neck, might it not be a natural association of several different animals?
Thank you. Yes, well, I am. Yes, I am indeed confident that this fossil is a single animal. Earlier today, in the company of several of our members, we subjected this part of the specimen to some scrutiny, going so far as to break apart the block, the rock containing the cervical vertebrae from that of the shoulder region. That the two rock masses are in that true association is confirmed by the presence of a fossil shell whose two halves can be matched either side of the fracture in the I think that satisfies
Such spontaneity does require applause. Well, I can see Dr. Mantell in the front row beginning to fidget a little bit. So I'm pleased to say that he has brought some of his prize specimens to London with him, and at his kind invitation I shall repair to his hotel to see his wonders of creation at first hand. He's also invited me to view the remainder of his collection in company with Mr. Lyle in a fortnight's time down in Sussex. Well, perhaps I could move on to a related topic that's been exercising my patience recently. We've seen at this meeting how the secondary rocks of Britain have been giving up their fossilized animal treasures, and how careful examination and consideration of their erstwhile buried carcasses have permitted new insights into the everyday life of antediluvian seas. We are accessing the Creator's book of nature in ever more detail. There is, however, a piece of this jigsaw puzzle of research missing. It appears that our knowledge of the wonders of God in creation is missing a vital component, one on which the successes of the animal kingdom must have relied on for their very survival. I'm talking, of course, about the plant kingdom. Both the Stonesfield slate and the Tilgate grit studied by Dr. Mantell contain an interesting flora. But where are the expert botanists who can draw forth the lessons available to be learned from these formations? Surely there must be an able botanist in the Linnaean Society, or the Horticultural Society, or even the Royal Society, who can bring the greenery of Eden back to life for us. With all the botanical marvels of Captain Cook's voyage available for study at the Royal College of Surgeons, and with the King's living collection at Kew, there really ought to be enough preserved and vital material for sensible comparisons to be made with the flora of secondary rocks. There's so many questions to be answered, but our botanists don't seem to be interested even in formulating the appropriate queries, let alone interrogating the remains of the past for suitable solutions. I feel like the voice of one crying in the wilderness. I'm reminded of the biblical verse, "Where is the God of Elijah?" To which Almighty's natural response might be, well, where are the Elijahs of God? My cri de coeur is, where are the botanists of the secondary rocks? Who can explain his sermons in stones to us? I can see Mr. Warburton is giving me the eye. Perhaps we should finish our discussion over tea. I would just like to say in closing how much we've all enjoyed this truly momentous meeting. Thank you to all the speakers, both of us, Mr. Koenigbern, for their clarity of communication and the toil they've invested in bringing to life such marvellous creatures from the past. I should also like to remark how encouraging it is to see so many ladies in our midst. Who knows, perhaps in 200 years' time, a lady might even occupy the office which it is my current privilege. So, let us adjourn to refreshment, both of the body and through convivial company of the soul. Uh-oh.
Reverend Collybeer.
Oh, he's there. Oh, I'm buckled.
I didn't recognise you. Without beer.
Sir, are you a fellow?
I'm Reverend. Wow. But my mother sends her best regards. Gentlemen. Oh, my goodness. And ladies too. Well, I never. About time two and all, in my opinion. I won't interrupt. You want me to, well, I don't know if you want to hear from the likes of me. I mean, I'm not supposed to be here, you know. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm out of my time and place. I didn't even get an invitation. You know, I'm supposed to be 4 and 20 years. And I feel more like 200. And I should be on the beach at Lyme Regis. Under Black Vein or Church Cliffs or at the Ammonite Graveyard. And I'm not due to be in London for 5 years or more. And then that will be an invitation from Mrs. Murchison. But as my mother says, I'm a history and a mystery. No, she told me when I was born I was a dull child. But the elements decided to claim me when I were a baby. My nurse took me to the horses fair at Rackfield. A storm came. Where did she take me? Under a tree. Oh, a thunderbolt and she were dead. But I lived. A brighter, happier child, and now I'm well known across the whole of Europe. And even Mr. Roberts, the schoolmaster, well, he's gone and written about me in his book. And he says there'll be many a book written about me in years to come, long after I'm gone. But you don't want to be going and believing everything you read about. After all, there'll be a mention of that song. You know the one. She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure. For if she sells seashells on the seashore, then I'm sure she says seashore shells, but I know nothing about shells. And I ain't never sold nothing on the seashore, although sometimes it comes into my shop. I sell fossils. My father, Richard, well, he called them curies. He showed me how to find them in their hiding places. Oh, there was none of your Latin then. They was called vertebrates, sea lilies, serpent snakes, crocodile teeth, St. Hilda's snakes. Ah, Richard Allen, you were a great man, and I was his merry girl. He'd have been so proud of my plesiosaurus. Well, maybe he did fall from Black Vein where I found it. I hope you likes it. You like my plesiosaurus? It's the first and only one in Europe, you know. Anyway, I mustn't keep you. I'm sure, I think you're about to have your tea. I better not waste any more of your time.
Thank you very much, Miss Anning, and it's so good to see you again.
Thank you, sir.
And now I suggest we repair to tea, and it just falls to me to say, God save King George.
In terms of proceedings, gentlemen and ladies, we will need to part the waves here, remove the seating, perhaps retire them to the walls, remove these tables so that the good servants can bring in our repast for this afternoon. I am sure that you will assist them admirably with a free passage to the table at the rear. Thank you. In the meantime, do make, as we normally do, pleasant, scientific conversation. Gentlemen and ladies, the repast will be yours. Thank you.